Hi, Matt.
How's it going?
Great. Nice to see you here. Do I have your permission to record the Skype interview?
Yes, you do.
Wonderful. Also, do I have your consent to upload this interview onto a website? The website will have a password and will be viewable by graduate studies associates and the interviewees like yourself.
Yes, you do.
Wonderful. So let me tell you about the project here. I'm doing my final project at Northern Arizona University with a master's degree majoring in rhetorical writing and digital media. I chose an interdisciplinary focus, the study of the documentary Cowspiracy, its effectiveness as a model for behavior change towards environmental sustainability, and as a media literacy tool. I'll briefly define media literacy. Media literacy is taught in such a way that we try to have people ask critical questions about media. Who made this image? Why did they make it? How would people read it differently from me? What do they want from this image? And also in media literacy, enhancing creativity of media allows a student to get the perspective of being behind the camera and realize it's a constructed image. So media literacy is basically being good at reading media. Are you ready to start the questions?
I am.
Great. So number one, please tell me about yourself.
Let's see. Currently, I'm living and teaching in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Prior to that, I was in Korea for 2 years, which is where I met you.
Yep.
I guess in the future, I myself will be going to grad school, most likely for geography. Still to determine it's going to be human geography or physical geography. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like the last 5 or 6 years, I've just been traveling. So I'm now kind of starting to be done with that, settle down, and yeah, that's me.
That's you. Do you think you'll go back to California to study? Or anywhere in the States?
Yeah, definitely in the States. I was in the Peace Corps previously a while back, so I'm going to use a Peace Corps fellowship program to hopefully go to grad school for free.
Wonderful.
And that is still to be determined. If it's in California, that'd be nice, but I have a feeling it probably won't be.
Well, you'll have to keep me on board about that. Sounds really exciting.
Definitely will.
Number two, so you watched the film Cowspiracy, right? What did you think of it?
I did like the film. I thought it was a really well-made film. You know, I've heard of a couple of the different issues and how they affect the environment, but I never really, I guess, realized how much related these different issues are relating to, I guess, the meat industry and maybe, you know, I guess just people's diets and eating meat. Like, for example, like the whole methane issue. I guess what you could say, like I knew about that, and I knew how like that was or supposed to be, is like a serious problem. I just didn't realize much more of a serious problem than say carbon monoxide, dioxide emissions. That and like, you know, I guess they're cutting the rainforests of pasture land, this and that, and how it's just not sustainable any way you look at it. Even the sustainable meat and dairy is still not sustainable.
Well, when did you watch it? This week?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah. So it's pretty fresh, eh?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much after I spoke with you, I downloaded it and watched it, on the big TV. So definitely had my full attention. Yeah, I mean, the guy that made the documentary did a really good job with it. And it's also interesting, as like the documentary progresses, how he gets into the question of why hasn't this issue been addressed with any of the major environmental organizations. So that was really interesting to hear about, I guess, like his reasons for uncovering why they're not dealing with this. And I guess it kind of makes sense, you know. Like one of the reasons he mentioned is that like these organizations are kind of run like a business, and you know, I guess they need money to survive too, and they just get into like a whole other serious set of issues if they're going to go after like another, I guess, environmental concern. Food for thought, right?
It is. Did you feel inspired to check up on any of the information or do any research about these organizations?
Yeah. Well, like the organizations he goes to, which like I think most of them like are fairly common that we know about.
Yeah.
Greenpeace, Surfrider, Oceana. What is it? The Sea Stewards, Sea Shepherds.
Yeah, I think Rainforest Action Network and
Yeah,
the California
So
Water Government Conservation
I'm
Board.
pretty familiar with most of those organizations. I always like to fact check, I guess, documentaries, and since I just watched it so recently, I haven't had time to fact check.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, as far as all the data that he goes through, how accurate it's all going to be. But if the documentary is true and correct, and all the numbers are correct, I mean, it should be the number one prime concern that we need to really, I guess, deal with and change. And it also seems to be like potentially like one of the easiest ways to deal with our environmental situation.
It could manage a panacea of environmental problems, right? I can send you the link to the film's fact check that they put up on a website and they continually update it. For this project, I did some research myself and I found a Chatham House study. Chatham House is a big think tank in England, and I found they've done like a 12-country study based on how this problem exists, like how to facilitate behavior change. It's pretty interesting. So they're also making a second documentary right now, and I noticed they've received 260% of their funding on Indiegogo for the next movie, which is addressing the healthcare industry.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So I guess when you say they,
I mean the filmmakers.
Yeah, is it? So I guess like the main, I don't know what you would say, like documentary as a character, the guy in the movie.
Yeah, Kip Anderson.
Yeah, and it's mainly his project.
Yeah.
And I know he mentioned that he had his initial funders, like halfway through the film, that they, pulled their funding.
Yep.
Maybe in response to the whole meat industry, I don't know, conspiracy, cowspiracy, whatever you might want to call it. So with the next film, I don't know, I guess, like, is he doing that with other partners, or is it with the same group of people?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure who he had lined up for the first film, but as you mentioned, they dropped the funding right about the time that he was trying to talk to Greenpeace, and they wouldn't talk to him, and I'm not sure if he mentioned that to his funders, but that's when they dropped him. And they just carried on, and then they finished the campaign on Indiegogo, a crowdsurfing website. And the second movie, they're doing completely from Indiegogo, so that's just anyone who wants to can contribute with their credit card, so it's completely individual source crowdfunding. Yeah, but I think to me that's a really important thing when I look at research and documents. Like, how is this being paid for? A lot of research is paid for by the companies themselves to promote themselves. It's not very convincing. Number 3
Yeah,
question.
exactly. Kind of like in the 60s, those cigarette studies where like 8 out of 10 doctors prefer Camels over Marlboros, the industry-funded scientific studies that are always skewed from the industry.
Yeah, it's really worth looking into the connections of researchers and who they're affiliated with to consider how seriously to take data, for sure. I'll send you the links and you can take a look. Some of the stats are not always the same quoted in every place, but generally in my opinion, it seemed like most of the stats they quoted were fairly conservative because it was going in the documentary, but they have a continual update of their stats and people who want to criticize the stats, and then they report back on the criticism and stuff. So far, it seems to stand up.
A quick question. How is the internet connection for you? Because you're kind of a bit choppy. Am I the same way?
Yeah. So I know, well, I have another friend that in Vietnam, and sometimes the connection's a little bit on and off. So I'll take a look at the quality after we're done and see how it is. I can continually hear you, but your image has been kind of freezing a little bit. So. Okay.
Yeah. The internet in our house is, I don't know, sometimes it's good, but other times it's bad. It just seems to be like a flip of coin. it's working on.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just do my best with that, and if parts of the interview are obscured, then I'll make a note about that and maybe ask you to clarify points and stuff. Number
Right.
3, well, you just watched it so recently, but the question is, did or perhaps will Cowspiracy influence your attitudes, beliefs, habits, behaviors in any way?
Yeah, actually, I don't think directly it will. I am not a vegan or a vegetarian. I do respect the lifestyle choice, and I do respect what it does for the environment. That's not to say like I'm a crazy big meat eater. I probably eat like 80% vegetables, 20% meat. But knowing that this is potentially like such a serious and harmful impact on the environment, and just all these different things that correlate that I never realized that had so much to do with, I guess, such like a simple, I don't know, maybe like problem. It definitely is going to be like on my mind, as far as potentially doing like a diet transition.
Yeah, that's good.
So we'll say maybe in the distant future it'll have an impact on me, but in the immediate future, not yet.
Okay. Well, even a reduction can make a big difference as well. I know, like, I am vegan, as you know, but it was a long time transition. It takes time to change dietary habits and stuff. Just interested to see if a film can influence someone in that way or not. Part of what I'm studying is how behavior change happens, The Chatham House study goes on to say it's not really realistic to expect people to change that easily, that government intervention would probably be necessary in some ways.
Well, we'll say also it's like baby steps, right? Like, I guess like several small impacts that eventually make up like the whole like larger impact. So say like this film, it's like one small step.
Yeah.
And then, slowly like through other different, I don't know, like educational campaigns, awareness, experiences, whatever, there'll be like a gradual change. So maybe like my behavior eventually will be modified and changed to go vegetarian, to go vegan. This film may not be like, the end all be all to make that happen, but it's definitely maybe the catalyst for it, or one of the catalysts.
One of the catalysts, yeah. One of the speakers in the film is the author of a book called Meatonomics, and he talks about how highly subsidized the agriculture industry is. Something to the effect of a $3 hamburger's real price is more around $15. So I think it's so embedded in people's the system of life in North America and a lot of parts of the world that it does have to happen on a fundamental, systematic level, like some kind of change, making alternatives more readily available and affordable. Some people complain, oh, it's so expensive to eat vegan. It could be expensive to eat organic, vegan, certain brands of foods can be really, really expensive, whereas meat choices that, if they weren't subsidized, they would be expensive, but they're not because of subsidies. Lots of things to consider.
Well, actually, that's like, you just touched on a pretty important point right there. As far as just like most kind of like just shitty foods, right? They're cheaper. Fast food, junk food, this and that.
Yeah.
And what is it? Like vegetarian, vegan lifestyle is normally associated as being like kind of like a niche thing for maybe like upper middle, upper class income, I guess, like people. So I feel like until I don't know, like the idea that eating vegetarian and vegan can be done for like a lower price for like the common person, it's going to be really difficult for it to spread. And I know that you can do it for a low price, but it's not the easiest, I guess, to find, I guess, vegetarian and vegan food for those low prices. You know what I mean? Like you probably, like you yourself, like know where to go to pick up things for pretty cheap, but it's not like if you go to any store, you'll get those good, cheap prices. Like, Whole Foods, for example, if you ever step foot in there, like your jaw drops at how everything is like ridiculously expensive. Um, and that's probably like what most people think of like vegetarian and like the vegan lifestyle is like, well, if I start that, I've got to start shopping at like Whole Foods or some other like local market where the prices are just crazy high.
Yeah. I remember when I lived in Vancouver before I came to Korea, and I was a heavy meat eater at that time. My roommate worked at a shop called Capers. I think it's like it's kind of a luxury organic shop, and I would go in there and it was such a beautiful place, but it was so expensive. I mean, I just graduated and couldn't really afford to buy very many things there, and I remember thinking the same thing too. If you want to eat the same foods like vegan cheeses and mock meats and stuff in Asia right now, it's just not really possible. They don't exist over here, but yeah, something to think about. Um, so number 4, how can Cowspiracy best be used as an educational tool inside or outside the classroom? Do you have any ideas about that?
I would say kind of like within the film, referring to what is it, the infographics when they have like the straight numbers and they actually show the charts.
Yeah.
For me personally, that was probably like the most powerful impact. Just to see like what in relationship to say, you guys like the comparison. I think of like carbon dioxide, monoxide to methane, and has like the little picture of the car or the truck with the bar graph, and then goes to the cow, and it's like much bigger.
Yeah.
So like I personally feel those sections of the film, you can just cut those out, and you can really like maybe shrink the film just to basically like the numbers. And since it is an infographic, it's not just like boring numbers or just strictly numbers. It's actually showing you something at the same time. So I feel like if you want to get down to like the grittiness of the film, like the basic stats, that's probably like the easiest way to use the film as an educational tool. I guess inside and outside the classroom too.
Yeah, if those infographics were given a big budget and put on Super Bowl football game commercial breaks or something instead of advertisements for whatever is on commercial breaks for the Super Bowl at that time, like having more people actually view those things would be really exciting. I think if they managed to get enough backers, maybe getting materials like that developed could be possible. I was thinking of maybe developing a classroom project where the students themselves would get to work with pieces of infographics or make similar ones like that, using their own media. Yeah.
That's true. The interactive element would be pretty important. That's a difficult one, I guess. Depends on maybe like the teacher and the teaching methodology, teaching style, maybe.
There are a lot of constrictions on what we can teach as EFL teachers as well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in our field, it's very narrow. Like, I feel like if maybe you were just like a normal teacher back home who was doing, I don't know, like general homeroom studies, or definitely like a science teacher, this would be like, game on.
Yeah.
But I mean, for us, like it's not even an option, really.
Yeah, originally I was encouraged to create this as an EFL project, and I tried to explain. A lot of my colleagues are working in America, and I think EFL and ESL are used a little bit synonymously there, and I think there's quite a huge difference between the levels of the students and sort of the attitudes towards different teaching materials and what's available. So I decided to focus my project on using it as a general education tool and see what options are available. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
Just that I was very impressed with the documentary. Like the actual film itself was produced well. I thought it got to the point that it was trying to, I guess, get at. It was interesting the whole time through, and yeah, definitely like for my own personal self, it's not going to change my behavior immediately. But like I said before, like it'll be like potentially a catalyst or a small reason or portion of the reason like why I might change my eating habits in the future. I definitely respect the film, respect what it's saying, and do feel like hopefully this issue will come on the forefront. And I also do hope that all the facts do check out in the film. So it'll be kind of heartbreaking if they don't. But I have full confidence of the integrity in the filmmaker that they do.
Well, I'll send you the link and let you take a look when you have some time.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, thanks, Matt. I'm going to sign off here, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you so much for participating.
Yeah, no trouble.
Okay.